Today's Insight class is going to be talking a little bit about using inventory in Stratum. I'm going to assume that a number of the people out there probably either have inventory or looking at adding inventory. But it's something that people ask us about quite a bit. It's also one of the more common things that we see included in Stratum. And what I wanted to do was talk about it being inventory at a kind of practical level. Kind of the most simple way you can get some inventory information into Stratum and then use that with some of the other views, et cetera, that you have in Stratum. So with that in mind, by the way, I'm Frank Bunker. I'm your tour guide for today. And I kind of wanted to just talk about, first of all, inventory in Stratum. What's kind of the basics to capture? So what's some of the most basic stuff to capture? As I go through this, if people have questions or comments, don't hesitate to chime in or use the chat feature in WebEx, and I'll try and respond. But once we talk about the stuff to capture in Stratum, then I want to talk about and show some of the analysis we can do, whether it's, just what do we have in inventory, or can we fill the orders versus can we fill orders and or perform, given what we're forecasted to do, maybe the value over time. Two classic KPIs that people look at, turns or inventory to sales ratio. Those are two pretty common metrics that we get asked about. In some industries, in particular in food and beverage, you might have some shelf life expirations, code dates, things of that nature. That takes a little bit more in terms of importing inventory, because you probably need to get to the lot level to do that stuff, but it is something that you can do. And then also using actions feature in Stratum that some of you are using, some may not be, but to proactively alert you when you have possible inventory issues. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk, first of all, in general, when we think about Stratum, broken into the different application areas, almost everyone has some kind of sales information. And that's going to be crucial when we think about that from an inventory perspective, if you want to calculate turns or inventory to sales ratio, which are the two most common metrics people look at. The other might be if you want to look at inventory vis-a-vis what you have on order or what your historic sales have been. So you need to have that information. Then, of course, the other side is inventory down at the bottom. And there's a lot of different things you can capture in inventory, but I think if you just capture some pretty basic information, basically the value in the units of what you have, you can do quite a few things, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I stole a couple slides from another presentation that we have, which is really to talk about our inventory module, and I really reduced them down to some of the most basic stuff. So this is just looking at what are some of the business goals and some of the challenges that we have, and why do we want to track inventory, et cetera. So the main reason people, I think, look at inventory at the end of the day is it's a customer service question. Obviously, you got to have the stuff on hand to ship, or at least have it when you're expecting to ship. And then the other is it's an investment question. How much money do you have invested in inventory versus those service levels? So a lot of different things you can do there. And this is a graphic that we have. I chopped this up a little bit, but just to look at, what do we do in our inventory module? And I think what we want to talk about today is the stuff in the yellow and the orange. Trends, analysis, and your position and your projections. The stuff in the purple in the middle really requires some additional information from, say, a forecasting solution, some other pieces that, we want to, some of those things you can do in inventory, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the basic stuff and a real practical approach to this. So what we want to do is, as I mentioned, get some metrics out there, maybe look at inventory to sales ratio. We also want to look at maybe available to promise or days of supply based on some different numbers you might have in Stratum, and either project where we might have shortages, or also look at where inventory is building. Obviously, we don't want to have too much inventory either, so that's another thing. So again, another slide from the inventory module presentation that I just wanted to put out there. This is some of the basic stuff that we do, and you guys can do pretty easily by capturing some pretty simple information about inventory. Just continuing through some of that, this is inventory based on current and planned demand. So if you guys have some kind of plan in Stratum, it's pretty simple then to start looking at do I have enough stuff to fulfill the plan? And those are things that you can do pretty easily in Stratum, and we'll show what some of those views might look at. So let's talk about a little bit about inventory in Stratum and what to capture. I think this is, when we think of inventory, there's some real basic stuff that you can capture. And the most basic stuff would be, I want to capture the units we currently have on hand, as well as the value of those units. That's probably the two simplest things that you can collect, and different ERPs make this easier or harder depending on the style and how they store inventory. This might be as simple as grabbing a number out of a table and updating that. It might be more complicated than that, where we have to grab a beginning balance and begin to track where we're at off of that. So most of the time, this is a number, though, that we can get, or these are two numbers that we can get, and that would get you, your basic inventory information. So if we can get units and value, we're sort of off to the races. Now there's some other pretty basic information that we can get, and one of the first things we see is people capturing inventory and holding the units and the value on hand, and also holding that in different inventory statuses. And some of the classic statuses that we run into, do you have inventory that's on hold for some reason? Maybe it's already allocated, and maybe there's a number that's available, and you need to decide in your inventory system, do you have different inventory statuses that you want to collect that inventory by? So very simple, same concept as capturing the information for units and value, although maybe you're going to capture it by different statuses as well. The other part of this, which kind of comes in, and it might be, is planned receipts and disbursements. Obviously, if you've got just a beginning balance, you're going to have some kind of or some representation of this stuff if we need to, over time, continue to calculate the current on hand. If you're not importing that just as a number. But the other part about this is it's interesting. And some of this may be if you're a distributor, maybe you get purchases, we can do that through the purchasing module and capture information that lets us know when we're expecting new product into inventory. But however you go about that, if you can capture that, that gives us, as we look into the future, if we're taking advantage of our forecast, the ability to understand, are we going to have enough inventory, not only what we have on hand today, but what we're planning to put into inventory. And if you're a manufacturing location, so that might be work orders, or it might be something that MRP is pushing off into inventory, so you have planned receipts there. So those numbers are a little tougher to get sometimes, but again, if we can get those, it's good stuff, because all this is in an effort to know what's on hand and ultimately what's actually available to be able to use. Now, another important part of inventory, and we run into this from folks, is how often do you want to update your inventory? So there's kind of two parts to this question. One is your current inventory position. And your current inventory position, very often, particularly with folks that have had Stratum for a longer period of time in importing inventory, is a snapshot as of last night. So you're capturing that. We blast through the inventory, put that into Stratum, and we know what was on hold what was on hand as of last night. Now, in that scenario, that's certainly one thing you can do. So the current inventory represents just as end of business yesterday. Now, in addition to that, though, with some of the changes we've put out there, you can use our trickle load feature, and you could consider loading inventory multiple times during the day to get to a near real-time situation where the inventory is a relatively current number, if that's important in your business in terms of how quickly you react to that information. So you might choose to use the trickle load to load your inventory and maybe your open order position back in the sales module on a more frequent basis so you can understand what you have available, et cetera. So that's one thing you can do with the current inventory position. Now, the other thing that can be important if you want to use your inventory to sales ratio, or you're calculating turns where you need the inventory over time, is to consider saving off snapshots, whether they're daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it may be, so that you can look at your historical inventory position as well. So that gets you information possibly if you want to look at inventory value. Is your value in inventory growing over time, shrinking over time? You want to know that by location, by individual item, by item group, things of that nature. You also might be in a position where you want to, as I said, calculate turns. You're going to need a number over time to do that. So saving off snapshots is certainly something that you can do. How often you save those snapshots, I have on here daily, weekly, it could be monthly, whatever number works for you, you can do that. It can be, depending on the volume of products, obviously it can be a lot of data or not that much data. So something to consider, but it is a way to take your current, a very simple inventory import that's grabbing just units and value, and then getting additional value out of that by saving that both for the current view as well as a historic view. So that's kind of some of the basics just in terms of what you can collect in a pretty straightforward sense. If we have that, where does that get us to? So as I mentioned earlier, there's two metrics that people ask us about, turns and inventory to sales. They're very similar measures, and that allows us to either one of those, you can calculate with what you have in Stratum. You can see here on turns, it's a popular metric. I grabbed right out Wikipedia. This is one of their calculations. I think the important thing that we run into with turns is to be aware that your version of turns, the period of time, what's the period of time you want to look at it, or are there multiple periods of time you want to look at it over? What do you use, average sales units, average sales value, whatever, however you calculate turns needs to be, determined and be consistent across the views so that you have that done. And this, in Stratum, you typically have both the sales, and if you capture the inventory stuff I mentioned, you have that as well. The other is inventory to sales ratio, a very similar metric. Both are indicators of sales and investment performance. In general, like if we look at the average inventory to sales ratio, an increase in your inventory to sales ratio from month to month generally indicates that either your investment in inventory is going up, you're continuing to invest, and it's growing more rapidly than sales, which traditionally would be a bad thing, or in fact your sales are falling, so that it appears that that ratio is going up. So again, another bad thing. So if that number is going up, that's a bad thing. It's going down, things are probably better, and it's a function of cash flow as well, or it can affect be an indicator on your cash flow as well. So that's why I think people look at those, and those are the two big metrics that people talk to us about. Just a couple other things in terms of using other information with inventory. So one thing, inventory in most situations, not all, but most, is typically not captured by customer. There's no concept of inventory being specific to customer, maybe until it reaches an allocated state. So one of the challenges people have is being able to display, say, the open orders for a sales rep or a specific customer and seeing the inventory number next to the on-order number so I can understand if I have enough for that particular order. So there's a technique, it's .default member. I'm going to show you how to do this in a minute in the demo, but this allows me to look at different pieces of information on a view that may not be stored by all of the dimensions that are in the view. So that's one thing. And then another technique here is to use hyperlinks so that I can maybe be looking at data at one level, link out of one view, passing information from that view to see additional information at a higher level. The other is a couple other things on the forecast side. If you can get a forecast down to the item level, whether you have that, whether you're doing that in Stratum, or whether we capture a forecast at a higher level and use our breakdown facility to get to the item level, if you have a forecast at the item level, now we're able to look out over time based on your current inventory position, and if you are able to capture planned receipts into inventory, now we can look over time and see, is our inventory position, are we in a good spot or not? So that's where we want to take advantage of a forecast, or, in lieu of a forecast, or as another metric, a different metric other than forecast, is taking a rolling average sales per week. So do we know how many units of something do we move on average over a yearly average per week, or is it rolling 6 weeks or the last 3 weeks, whatever it is, but I can take advantage of some of the way we deal with dates, and you can do things in Stratum to take advantage of that number and use that number to understand for any given item based on what we have in inventory, do we think we have enough to work with. And then the last thing I wanted to talk just about, don't know if anyone on the call is in a business that has inventory that expires, but if you are, I think it's worth mentioning that that's something that we do have people doing in Stratum, but it does require you to capture your inventory at the lot level as each lot expires on different dates. And there's some math you can do there for current date to date and some math, date math that is available in Stratum and that you can use to figure that stuff out. So those are all just different things you can do if you capture the data in Stratum. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start my demo. Are there any questions or anything that I could answer while I'm flipping around here to get to my demo? I'm taking no chat and no questions as a no to those answers. Apologize for that. So let's just look at a couple of views that I have in Stratum, how you might take advantage of inventory information in Stratum when you're looking at stuff. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm actually going to do an open orders review. So this is a view that allows me to go in for, say, by customer. And let's say I want to look up one of my key customers. So kind of coming from the sales side, how might someone on the sales side here or on the service side take advantage of this? I'm going to pick one of my key customers in my demo and run this view. And what it's going to show me is here for that particular customer sold to, which was Wilder Foods in the East, here's what they have on order from an amount standpoint, and here's what they have on order from a standpoint of here's what they have on order in terms of units. And I put together a view that also includes the available inventory. Now, one of the things I'll show in a minute is how I got the inventory in there, because obviously, maybe not obviously, but I'm looking at this by sold to, by customer, and my inventory is not stored that way. So somehow I'm looking at inventory by product, but ignoring the fact that it's by customer when I look at that. So the other thing that I've done on this view is I've used conditional formatting and some simple math to come up with a couple of alerts here. The first is in the column that's in color there, the different colors let me know that did this customer order a significant portion of my inventory. So I have this thing going to yellow at any time they order more than 25% or 20% of my inventory. So right here, I have the inventory to cover it, but this guy's ordering almost 60% of the overall inventory I have available, and I might want to investigate that particular problem. And to do that, I've added a link on this view. So I'm using a concept called hyperlinking, and what I'm going to do is click to another view that ignores the customer and just lets me know overall, what do I have on order for this particular product versus what I have in stock. So that took me out, passed in that item number, and specifically says, what do I have on hand? What's been the rolling 52-week average sales for this product? You know, what are my weeks of supply? And I can see overall I've got a shortage on this particular product. So overall, this guy placing a big order for that product is probably causing me a multitude of concerns, not the least of which is I'm going to be short overall for that product. The ones I've also added, the ones with an alert here or an exclamation point, you can see I'm just flat out of inventory there. So I have no inventory or not enough inventory to even cover the open orders for this specific customer, and obviously that's of a concern to me. So this is a way that I can look at this and take advantage of my inventory information as well as my sales and my open order information to understand my position. Now, what I want to do real quick is look at that inventory calculation that is displayed there so I can just see how that was done. So I'm going to go to my available inventory here. You can see, first of all, right up here, I have a measure called on hand, and that's out of my inventory category, and that's the sum of all of the available inventory, the different statuses that I have. But I have that pre-calculated sitting in the database in Stratum. So I have my on-hand amount, but that on-hand amount won't display, excuse me, in this view if I just put it out there because of the customer here. Again, my inventory is not stored by customer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to look at the calculation that I have for this available inventory. And if I bring that up, you'll see a couple of things here. First of all, I'm only going to do this calculation if there's data on the row. So that helps me understand that there is a reason to do the calc, and this will help with making sure the view stays contained and run quicker only for the products where there is data. The other point of this is I only want to do this calculation if I'm at the product level, because that's where I have the inventory. So this gets down to the brass tacks here. This particular item, you can see this tells me, this is actually technically a tuple calculation for those of you that care what it's called. But you can see I said for the customer sold to dimension, use the default member, which eventually in this case says, hey, the default member is just nothing. So go ahead and ignore it. And I could ignore multiple dimensions here if I wanted. I could just have those listed separated by a comma using the dot default member associated with that. Now, that's just a quick example of that, and then you can see it's followed by the measures on hand here. So this is that measure on hand that I have in my view. So what this is saying is when you display this measure, just ignore the customer dimension. Just don't even use it. Now, if you want a little more dissertation on this particular topic, you can go to the Stratum forum, search for the word default member, and you'll get a write-up on how to use this. I have an example of looking at inventory, I think ignoring the sales rep and some other stuff. So, but that's how you can take advantage of inventory in a view where you're focused on customer. Now, let's look at a couple other things here. Now, looking specifically at some inventory stuff. So, one of the things I'm going to come down here, just go into say ATP or available to promise. So, this is a view that is going to show me. It's going to take into account my forecast. So I'll come in here by brand, for example. I don't know, I'll pick First Choice or whatever. And it's going to show me all the items in that particular brand, and it's going to take into account my forecast. So this is going to allow me to look at my forecast. Look at my on hand. In this case, I'm using purchase orders or work orders, depending on if this is a make or buy product, and bringing in the expected inventory.
I couldn't find that when I did Alan came over. He was
hey, can you guys put your phones on mute if you're not going to be talking? I'm overhearing some conversations right now.
Two parameters to my message. Now the code that was calling it thought it was a different. You know how you can overload? Yeah. Thought it was
hey, can you put your phone on mute?
Hearing, but now it was saying, you're not associated with that anymore.
Yeah, look for it before I make a machine.
Yes, or use Grunt.
Hey, Scott, can you put your phone on mute?
Okay,
In my case, you'll have to use Grunt because
I guess not. So anyways, this open orders, purchase orders or work orders, this would allow you to, this could be receipts into inventory. In this particular case, I'm taking purchase orders and work orders out of our manufacturing and purchasing module, but you could just as easily, or maybe just the same, do that with receipts. And you can see I've used some highlighting on the columns here. In my particular demo, I look in 3-month planning horizon. So I've got what's on hand, what I'm expecting inventory, anything that I have on a sales order for that product, and anything, then I do a calculation to say, hey, what's available to promise? And for that very first product, I'm in good shape. I have a green, I have that in green. But you can see as we go down the list here, I've got some different indicators. First of all, I've got an indicator with an exclamation point. That means, in my example, I've set that up so I don't have enough inventory even to cover my open orders. So that's certainly something that I'm concerned about. And as I move out to the next month, I continue to do the calculation taking over any leftover inventory from the prior month, any new receipts, and then what's my forecast. And I'm just continuing to do this as I go out. And the exclamation point, I'm out of inventory for my open orders. The red dot actually is I'm short for the forecast, but I've got my open orders covered. And then the last thing I have, you can see up over here, I've actually got a gray up arrow in red, and that indicates that my inventory is building in a significant amount. And you can pick your percentage, whatever that number is, but I have my inventory growing by a percentage over sales, and that's a concern as well. Obviously, I'm building inventory instead of not having enough. So you can see in my demo, I have a whole series of inventory issues. I'm sure everyone out there doesn't really have inventory issues, but this helps you to see that and understand that, and takes advantage of receipts and also advantage of your forecast to calculate what you got there. So that's one thing. Another way to look at this might be inventory availability. Excuse me, coming at this a little differently. I'm taking my on hand and actually looking at taking out anything that's already allocated, calculating my available inventory off of that. So this is that example of where I'm collecting inventory, and I'm also collecting inventory by different statuses. In my case, I've got an allocated status that I take that and back it out of the overall on-hand amount. Then I bump that up against the rolling 52-week average sales. Now, this is, a pretty simple number in Stratum. This is obviously just looking at a rolling 52 weeks. You could do a rolling 6 weeks, whatever. These are, pretty easy to calculate, in terms of how you put together that particular piece. So I've just got that as a tuple right there going out. So you can do that pretty easily. And then I calculate my weeks of supply. So, here's my weeks of supply, and obviously I could calculate this. I could do all kinds of things here. I could use this and say, I want everything that's filter this if I just wanted to see, I don't know, everything that I've got less than 2 weeks. So I could say, less than 2 here, something like that. So I could say, okay, and that would filter out stuff on the view to only those product problems. Over here, the exclamation point, that's telling me I've got an inventory shortfall again, things of that nature. Then I also look at non-hold open orders. So I've got, stuff going on over here, non-hold, on-hand value allocated, that kind of stuff. So I've got the value numbers at the end down here. But this lets me know total shortfall. So I'm short based the total inventory, and then I've actually used my non-hold orders. So I'm using the inventory, not the inventory status, but the order status as well. I'm taking that into account here to say, hey, for my orders that aren't on hold, maybe I've got orders that are on credit hold, whatever. In some of these cases where I'm out of inventory, actually I've got the hold orders covered, or the not hold orders covered. So, those are ways, again, you can use your inventory in conjunction with sales information to understand your position, et cetera. Now, along those lines, another feature that I can take advantage of in Stratum would be our alerting. So thinking of that inventory availability that we were just looking at, I can use that same view to send myself an alert. So here I'm using an action in Stratum to broadcast to me every week, an example of where I'm at, and only show me the products that have inventory issues. So here you can see this is that ATP view that I was showing you earlier, but filtered to show me only products that I have an issue with, so that I can understand whether or not I've got inventory problems. So I can do that, and that was back in my Outlook, allowing me to use actions to see what I was showing, what the problems might be there. So just a couple other things that I thought, here I can look at turns. I have a view that shows me inventory turns. So I'm calculating this. I've got my warehouses going across the top. I've got turns at a high level here by brand, and then I can drill down, obviously, by brand into, the individual items that make that up. So again, using sales information and inventory information, this uses inventory information if you've got it snapshotted over time, so I can understand this over time. So that's looking at turns. I did a little more work with inventory to sales ratio, so I'll show that view. Again, a very similar calculation, but this allows me, this particular view, interesting enough, was something put together in conjunction with a customer who wanted to see something. So I'm looking at the rolling average 6-month inventory to sales ratio. Then I've got the rolling 3-month inventory to sales ratio, a trend. So that's the rolling 3 versus the rolling 6. Is it going up or down? Obviously, if it's going up, I've highlighted that. Then I've also got going out across the page the next 6 months of 6 months of actual inventory to sales ratio, and then up to the current month out here at the end, where I'm looking at where that's at, and I've got that set with a conditional format. And then I've added graphs along the same line, so I can look at, I've graphed that over time. This graph shows me, everything's trending pretty well here. I have a target strip line in here at 15%. I've got 2 products that are, or two product lines that are a little higher than I like, but they're trending down, so that's all good news. So anyways, this is, a view that allows me to use the time functions in Stratum to look at rolling 3, rolling 6, the past X number of months, in this case the past 6 months. It also allows me to compare things using additional formats and a trend, and using sales and inventory information that I captured over time. So that's just, again, some simple examples of that. And then, I've got a couple dashboard examples here. These are, I've got, some calculations here that are showing me shortages. So estimated days of supply. I apologize, I didn't put an if around the divide by 0 there. But anyways, this lets me know if I've got excess inventory versus what I've been doing. So again, calculating my current on hand, what I've got, estimated days of supply, using my lead time to look how long I've got my orders, how long it'll take me to get product. I've also got turns graph down here. I've got another graph. What do I have over here? I forget what I have. Yeah. So I've got another graph. It shows me another dashboard shows me a couple of graphs. One of these, this side, the ones on the right are pretty straightforward. This is just looking at inventory over a rolling 12 months or 13 months to understand, is my inventory growing? In my demo, I have kind of got inventory under control at some point at the end of the year, and then it just continued growing again. But another interesting graph, I think, is over here on the right. This actually lets me look at inventory value over time, this year versus last year, so how am I doing year over year? But it also takes this year's inventory and values it at last year's cost, which is an interesting thing to say, hey, is my inventory value growing over time, but that's based on a price increase versus the actual number of units I have on hand. So just different things you can do pretty simply with the data that you can pretty easily collect in Stratum to look at inventory. So with that, that's the end.